computer. Good morning and welcome to today. And I am talking to a lady who is, in my opinion, my humble opinion, an awesome woman who does amazing things for people. Her name is Vanessa, a name you cannot forget. Welcome, Vanessa. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where did you come from?
Hi, Bev. Thank you for inviting me. So where do I come from? Well, this is my sense of humour. I come from my mummy's tummy.
That's why we love Vanessa. So tell us a bit about what you do at the moment. What is it your business is about?
So I help professional people be able to generate more income ethically, very important for me, without having to get more clients, do more work or compromise value or values by making sure they charge what they're worth and at the same time create a beneficial work-life balance.
Do you think then a lot of professional people don't charge what they're worth?
I know you might be surprised to think that, because I think often people feel that people who are established or people who are lawyers or accountants or other people don't have this problem. But let me tell you, this problem is rife. It's across the board, all ages, all disciplines, all experiences. It's a human problem. And it's really more about the personality of the person than it is about the job they do or how good they are at what they do.
That's really interesting, talking about the personality. So take us back a little bit before you came into business. Give us a bit about your background and how you got to where you are now.
Gosh, I'll have to do a shortened version, because when you get to my age, Bev, there's a lot of background.
Take no notice of her, she's not that old.
So I did all sorts of different jobs, but I was always seeking. And then quite a long time ago, I came across public speaking when I was in a firm doing a job I didn't really like. And they put me on a presentation skills course for 3 days, and I loved it. And at the same time, I was scared about it. And then when it got to about 1999, I was really hating my job. There was a lot of things going on personally in my life that were not great. I knew I was in the wrong place. And I discovered this public speaking thing. And there was a part of me that knew I needed to be doing something with it, although I didn't know what. And in July 1999, I stood up in an open plan office where I worked and said very loudly, I'll be out of this firm by the end of the year.
Love that.
Now, you could call it a declaration to the universe. And I had no idea when I said that what I was actually doing or saying, but that's what I said. And in the October of that year, my mother died, so that was really unfortunate. And I had been asking for voluntary redundancy for a long time in that firm. I'd asked more than once. And in the November, they asked who would like to be made redundant. And my hand went up faster than anybody else's. And of course, there were other people too. So by the end of November of that year where I declared I'd be out, I was out. And all I knew was that I wanted to do training in what? I had no idea. I didn't have a background in it. That's all I knew. And so off I went like the fool in the tarot, looking for adventure and looking for a job in training when I had no experience in it. And that's how it all began. And really, I suppose, because we don't have loads of time, I'm not going to go into great details. But what I want to get across, the message I want to get across to people is that when you have an idea, even though it might seem like it's crazy, scary, etc., if it comes from the right place, because there's that part of you, the unconscious mind, the higher self, I don't know what you'd like to call it, that knows more about you than you do, and it knows your path. So it's good to follow it. So I guess I've followed things. I've constantly taken leaps of faith into the unknown. I've felt scared more times than I've not felt scared. But I've really followed my heart, despite the noise in my head saying this is scary. That's what I've done. So a whole set of circumstances ensued. And later on, I got to the point, and it took quite a few years, where I realized I needed to be working for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so that started manifesting. But at the time, I was clueless about everything. I knew nothing about business, nothing about anything really. But I could present reasonably well, and I could help people overcome their fears of presenting. And that I discovered. So it was a talent I discovered along the way. So that's how it all began. And really one thing moved on to another. At the time, I didn't even know about coaching. I'd never even heard of coaching. So if we fast forward, 2006 is when I finally went out on my own, clueless in the world, made a decision, had a bit of money in the bank, and started networking. I'd never heard of networking before either until I came across it. And then started creating a one-day workshop teaching people how to speak in public. And that was how it started. But as I said, I was really clueless. But what I was good at was inspiring people and getting people motivated and saying, yes, this is good, and feeling that it was helping them. And then 2008 came, and we had the financial crash, if you remember, when training, that kind of training went out the window.
Yeah.
And coincidentally, at the same time, I had a personal crash because 3 people, including my father and my ex-husband, all died within 3 months and very rapidly. And I went down the pan. So, you know, everything happens for a reason. Yeah. And although at the time it seemed dreadful and I had to go into hiding in hermitage, that's what I did. And then when I came out, then I went seeking networking again and found myself a coach.
Yeah.
And that sort of got me starting back on track. So that was probably about 2010, 2011. So I probably had quite a lot of downtime where I wasn't really doing very much at all. But again, you know, when you're following your heart, even if there are problems, you know, somehow or another the universe supports you. And the money was there. I wasn't on my uppers. So I was fine from that perspective. But I was in a shoddy state emotionally. So I went seeking help of all sorts, because my journey really has been relentless self-improver.
I love that idea, the professional self-improver.
And the thing is, you know, when you come into this world and you're meant to be a coach, and I didn't know when I came to the world that's what I was meant to be, then unfortunately, if that's the path you embark on, you're not going to get it easy, because you can't be a coach and have had it easy, because then if you've had it easy, you don't understand people.
No, it's true.
You need to understand people, and you need to understand their emotions and how they react to things and all of that. So as a coach, an empath, a sensitive, whatever you like to call me, I feel things extremely deeply, and sometimes to the point of it being way too much. But then that means when I encounter other people who've become clients, nobody phases me.
And that I'm going to jump in there, because that interests me, because you've been through a lot of changes over the years. And actually, in the short time I've known you, I've seen some quite big changes within you, which have been marvellous. So the people you work with, and I know we've had this discussion, do you feel that they need change, or is it more about they love what they do, but they've become bogged down with self-doubt, or with not being able to make changes in order to charge what they're worth?
Yeah, it's not necessarily that they need to change their job, although they might do. I mean, that depends. I mean, I tend to work with people who are in businesses, although I do work with firms as well. So some people might need to change their job, but often it's because they don't know how to manage the business side of things, and they've got lots of beliefs about themselves that are really not beneficial for them. So we have to separate out people's technical expertise and ability from their emotional intelligence, because they're just not the same thing. So you can be brilliant at what you do, and yet you're not brilliant at looking after yourself or your business. And there are something like 5 characteristics that I've identified of people who have the most challenge around charging. And I think they're much more commonplace than people realise.
Mm.
And those are, and of course, they're also what I've had.
Yeah.
And so therefore, the people who show up in front of me just are a mirror image of me doing different jobs.
I suspect any of us in business have struggled with that. What shall I charge?
Yeah. I think anybody can struggle with it. I think there's just a question of degree about how bad that might be, like anything. So everybody's on the continuum of charging. Some people might be mega confident, and they could be overcharging and not be that great at what they do, just because they have a lot of confidence.
I have met a few of those online.
And then on the other end, there could be people who are absolutely brilliant at what they do.
Yeah.
And yet their self-worth is low, but it's nothing to do with their ability. It's to do with how they've picked things up as a child, how they've learned. So the characteristics for anybody listening who might be interested and might be able to identify themselves and go, oh my God, that's me, are very conscientious and good at what they do. And there's one part of them that knows they're good at what they do.
Yeah.
Then they're perfectionists, which of course is linked with being very conscientious.
Yeah.
There's people pleasing, which is commonplace.
My problem for a while.
I think it's a lot of people's, especially women probably, because they were really conditioned to think in that way. Put everybody else first and yourself.
We want people to like us. It is and I'm generalising, it is a generally female thing that we want people to like us.
Well, you know, females have been brainwashed to be the carers, and therefore it's natural, I guess, that they want to be liked because they are the carers and they do put themselves last. I saw it in my mother. It used to, even in my teenage years, I noticed it.
Yeah.
I didn't like it. I thought it wasn't right. It didn't feel right.
Yeah, yeah.
So people pleasers, perfectionists, conscientious, sensitive people. And sometimes control freaks. So all those characteristics, which they won't necessarily have identified for themselves, but when I say it, often people do recognize it, drive them to look after their clients and put their client up there, and they are down there. And you can see, can you see my hands?
Yes.
So if the client is up there and they're down there, they're not in balance. So it's not just the money that's being affected, it's their well-being, it's their health, it's their time, it's everything. And they're running around like headless chickens, really, trying to do all this pleasing for clients that don't necessarily value them as much as they could or should, because when something's given easily without real thought to it, it's not necessarily valued that much.
So do you think when you've worked with somebody and they've managed to identify where their lack of self-worth comes from and sort of the personality and stuff, and they've become more confident, do you think it's easier then for them then to say, well, no, that's what I'm worth and that's what I'm charging?
Yes, obviously it's not an overnight success necessarily, but yes, in essence, because if you think about it, most of our behaviour is unconscious, and our expertise is also held in the unconscious. So we don't even know how much we know. We just utilise it, and the longer you've been doing something, the easier it becomes, the more you take it for granted. And so most of our thinking comes from the unconscious mind, because they're thoughts that we've had before. And we have something like 50 to 80,000 thoughts a day. But most of them are the same ones that we've had before. And a lot of them are just they just come up automatic. It's the automatic pilot, and we don't challenge them. And so they carry on behaving that way. So part of my job is twofold, is to give them processes for being able to charge effectively, whether it's through communication, understanding their value, just how to discuss fees, when to bring it in, etc., all those different things. But it's also the mindset. It's about understanding how to pull out from the subconscious mind what you need to and bring it into the conscious mind, whether it's the good stuff or not the good stuff, to give you choice.
Wow.
If you're working from the unconscious mind has collected millions of bits of information, beliefs, everything you've seen, heard, touched, tasted, smelt, getting a bit of a lesson here as well. All of that stuff is held there. And so it started from the day you were born.
That's quite scary, isn't it?
It's quite scary, because what it means is there's a mishmash of positive, negative, and neutral around in there. And you're operating from that system. So say, for example, as a child, you were told, don't talk to strangers. Now, of course, that was a sensible thing to tell a child. You don't want them talking to strangers because they might whisk them away and do nasty things to them. However, if that was such a strong belief for a person, you know, it was really intense the way they were told, they might grow up as adults, go out networking, and then be really uncomfortable talking to strangers. And it could be that they've got this old pattern running, which says, you know, stranger danger, keep away. So that belief when you were a child that was beneficial is no longer beneficial as an adult who's in business.
It's interesting, isn't it, that so much of the way we behave and think and do stuff as adults has a lot that we've taken, you know, all that stuff in our suitcases that we dragged along with us and never put down. Do you know, Vanessa, I could talk to you for hours on this subject, and I know our listeners could listen to you for hours on this subject. And I just want to say to everybody who's listening to this, you need to be talking to Vanessa. And Vanessa will listen to you. She'll have a phone call with you, and she'll find out if you're right to work with her or she's right to work with you. She's awesome like that. And I'm going to give all the details at the end of here, how you can contact her. So Vanessa, is there one really lovely piece of advice or a tip you could give us? Because it's not all the accountants and the solicitors. I'm sitting here thinking, I'm sure I don't charge what I'm worth all the time. What can we do in this one moment that might help us just move forward?
Oh, I had something in my mind and then it's gone right out again.
People hate me asking that question.
Okay, so I guess my message this week is, when you get a message that comes up in your mind that's fear-based, that makes you feel uncomfortable, rather than accepting it or just going along with it, believing it, challenge it by saying, is that really true?
That's really nice. I like that.
Really simple, because what you're doing is saying, I'm here as the conscious adult, challenging what is just programming. Because if we're feeling fear, unless there's a physical danger, I'm talking about imaginary fears that we have, not physical danger, then you need to challenge it, because the unconscious mind, unfortunately, can't tell the difference between a real physical danger and an imaginary one.
Absolutely.
So the response you get of fear is exactly the same in both scenarios. So if a lion or a tiger falls in front of you, do not question it. Just get the hell out of there.
Yeah, I think I'll just run.
Yes, just run. If it's any one of your imaginary fears, then you need to challenge it. So that would be my best advice in a quick tip.
I just think that's an amazing piece of advice, actually, because it does make us stop and think about what we're thinking. So,
yes,
Vanessa, I can't thank you enough for taking time out to talk to us all today. I know people are going to want to speak to you. So all of you need to contact Vanessa, email her. Don't all ring her on the same day, but email her. She has amazing stuff she can show you. And I just want to say thank you. It's been lovely.
Oh, thank you. I've enjoyed it as well. It's gone far too fast, though.
These things always do when you're talking with lovely people. But she'll be back. You will be hearing from Vanessa. She'll be doing all sorts of things in the future. And
I will be.
Okay, bye.
Bye.